Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're in part 2 of a 3-part series where I'm helping students to understand the Eightfold Path. We're going into each section of the Eightfold Path in detail so that here at the beginning of the group learning program, you can understand the path forward to the enlightened mental state and how to attain this enlightened mental state. So last week we talked about the wisdom section. This week it's going to be moral conduct. So I'm going to help you to understand this as it relates to the natural law of dhamma, of this cause and effect. But first we're going to start with meditation so that you guys can start to train your minds with meditation. Perhaps you're doing this on your own, which would be really wise, building up your practice to 2 or 3 times per day for 30 minutes or more, gradually building that up. Each class at the beginning, I also do meditation with you to help you along with your journey in building up your meditation practice. So if you'd like to join along for meditation, you're welcome to take a position that you like. I'm going to start with chanting to ease us into meditation, and then I'm going to come back in with some guidance. There'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet, and then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Phutang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakhato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanam Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะกะวาโพตังมะกะวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะควาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสตาตาวามานุสนังโพโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I would like to welcome all of you guys to our class, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. Welcome to today's class. As I mentioned, this is our group learning program where we meet each Sunday and Wednesday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And these classes are exactly the same, whether it's 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. It's just those different times for the different time zones so that you have an opportunity to join whatever class is available for you. What I've done is I've restarted the group learning program a couple of weeks ago, and now I'm going to do a 3-part series on the Eightfold Path. And last week we did the first part, which is understanding the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. I shared right view and right intention, and this is where you understand the Four Noble Truths, understanding the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. That's where you learn that the mind is causing its own feelings, all that discontentedness, whether it's pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant feelings, it's all coming from craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. And when the mind gets what it wants, it experiences those pleasant feelings, and when it doesn't get what it wants, it experiences the painful feelings. And when those painful feelings are arising, what the unenlightened mind does with the lack of wisdom is it will tend to blame other people for those feelings. But the more that you independently verify this and you see the truth for yourself, that it's the mind itself that's causing these feelings through craving, desire, attachment, the mind's longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. And I showed you how to independently verify these teachings, that you're not believing anything, that you're learning, examining, and investigating, you're reflecting on those teachings to independently verify them, and then you're practicing them, integrating them into your life in order to train your mind. Because what the mind's going to want to do with this lack of wisdom is when you're experiencing those painful feelings, you might be wanting to push people away. This is where the mind has aversion. You might be pushing the person away or pushing the situation away, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But it doesn't, because you know you've done that before, where you've pushed people or a situation out of your life and it didn't actually solve the problem, because your mind still gets angry or annoyed or frustrated or agitated. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile with people. Through your intention, speech, and actions, you might be hostile. And now this damages your relationships, and people might choose to leave out of the relationship with you because of the bitterness and the hostility. Or you might actually be putting your expectations on people and trying to control them and trying to get them to do things your way. This is the three things that the unenlightened mind will typically do when it's having wrong view. When it's blaming other people for the feelings that you experience and it doesn't have the wisdom to understand right view, it will push people away or push the situation away. It'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile towards individuals, almost like growling and roaring like an animal. Or you'll put your expectations on people and people feel pressured and they might leave out of your life. This is where you're not able to actually spend time with all beings harmoniously. You'll find that in some situations you're annoyed or you're frustrated or you're irritated or you just dislike other people. This is coming from the mind's pollution, and you need to be able to understand what's causing it in order to be able to fix it. So that's why the Buddha teaches you right view first as a foundation, and everything else gets built upon that. So after right view, and you understand that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings, and you're going to need to eliminate these through eliminating craving, desire, attachment, and it's the Eightfold Path that's going to do that for you. The next step is right intention, where I taught you 3 different intentions or thinking or thoughts. The mind needs to cultivate this inside the mind, these intentions of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. What renunciation is, where the mind's willing to let go of its unwholesomeness, where it's willing to let go of its false beliefs and opinions. One of the false beliefs that one needs to get rid of right away is the belief that someone else is causing you to be angry or frustrated or sad. This is something that the mind tends to hold on to. But these beliefs that you have in your mind, you don't know whether they're true or false because the mind's just believing them. Either somebody convinced you to believe them or you're convinced yourself to believe it. And you might have certain beliefs in your mind, but by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have any beliefs whatsoever because you've investigated the natural laws so closely that you have the truth. You know the truth with 100% certainty. You're learning not to believe anything whatsoever. So you're not getting rid of your false beliefs on this path and bringing in new beliefs. That's not the way any of this works. You're actually bringing in wisdom where you can independently verify and see the truth through learning, reflection, and practice. And that is what's going to get rid of these false beliefs, opinions, and views. So you need to practice the intention of renunciation where you're willing to let those things go. Because if you're experiencing anger and frustration and all those other discontent feelings now, then there's certain things in your mind that your mind just doesn't know. There's certain wisdom that the mind is lacking. And when you're able to acknowledge that and be willing to let those things go and bring in this wisdom, that's where you can really actually get to enlightenment. So that's why the very next thing that the Buddha teaches you after right view is the intention of renunciation, being willing to let go of your unwholesomeness and your false beliefs, opinions, and views. Intention of non-ill will is to have loving kindness or active goodwill towards all beings, a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And the intention of harmlessness is being disinterested or incapable of causing harm to other beings. Because as long as you're putting harm out into the world, this harm is going to come back to you. So then the moral conduct is built on top of this wisdom section. And then next class, we're going to be going into the mental discipline section so that you can understand how to bring all of this into practice. Because you're not going to be able to just snap your fingers and instantly practice these things that I'm teaching you. It's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. This group learning program is 7 months, but you're not going to be able to learn every single thing in that period of time and implement every single thing. You're going to need to maybe take this program more than once, or you're going to need to continue to develop over time so that you can gradually move the mind to enlightenment. But this class, we're going to be going into right speech, right action, and right livelihood. This is the moral conduct section, because as long as you're putting harm out through your moral conduct, this harm is going to come back to you, and you're going to experience unwholesome results. So what the Buddha is teaching you in the moral conduct section is essentially how to stop spewing all this unwholesome moral conduct, this unwise moral conduct that's going to then produce unwholesome dhamma. It's kind of like a pipe has bursted, and now it's like spewing all this water or all this oil all over the place. And what the Buddha is teaching you is how to close that down so that you're no longer causing harm in the world through your moral conduct, so you can experience more and more improvement in your relationships. Because oftentimes when we struggle in our relationships, we want other people to change. We keep trying to convince other people to change. And this doesn't actually work, because you can't change other people. You can only change your own mind. And that's going to be challenging enough for you. So when you work on transforming your own mind through cultivating wisdom, improving your moral conduct, developing mental discipline, now you'll actually see real improvement in your life, because you'll be able to change the way you interact in the world, and then people will change the way they interact with you. Slowly but surely, you'll see that people in the world will start gradually changing the way that they interact with you. What the Buddha is actually teaching you as part of the moral conduct section is he's teaching you the natural law of dhamma. In fact, all of his teachings, in one way or another, are coming back to this natural law. Some people refer to this as karma. This is from the Sanskrit version. And then there's the word dhamma, which is from the Pali language. So depending on what language someone's using, either Sanskrit or Pali, they might use karma or dhamma. I tend to use the word dhamma because the original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, and this is the word that people tend to use that are studying the original words of the Buddha. And if this translated to just one English word, I would use that because it'd be a lot easier for everybody. But it doesn't. There's multiple words that you need to understand in order to understand what the natural law of dhamma is. This is a natural law that's affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. Just like the natural law of gravity affected us, whether we're aware of it or not, this natural law is also affecting you. And what the natural law of dhamma is it's cause and effect, or action and results. Essentially, when you make wise decisions, it's going to produce wholesome results, or wholesome dhamma. And when you make unwise decisions, it's going to produce unwholesome results, or unwholesome dhamma. So it's the results of your decisions. That's what the natural law of dhamma is. It's your life, your decisions, and your results. And when you're making decisions either wisely or unwisely, it's either going to produce wholesome dhamma or unwholesome dhamma. So the natural law of dhamma, it isn't punishments and rewards. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's not superstition. It's not a black cloud that's following you around. It's not even about who's at fault or who's to blame. It's essentially a sequence of events that when there's a certain decision made, there's going to be a certain effect as a result of that. And what the Buddha is helping you to be able to do throughout all of his teachings is to understand this natural law so that more and more you understand the wise decisions that leads to wholesome dhamma, or wholesome results. Because as long as you lack wisdom, you're going to keep inadvertently making unwise decisions, thinking you're making all the best decisions in the world, and it's leading to unwholesome results. This is like going down the beach, kicking up a bunch of sand, and it keeps blowing back in your eyes, and you just don't know why. You don't understand why. Well, when you learn that that's unwise to kick up sand because it's going to blow back in your face, then you stop kicking up the sand. Right? And this is a wise decision that we've made. And when we walk down the beach, we don't kick up sand. Maybe when we were a child, we did, but as we get older, we realize that's unwise. So we stop doing that. And we learn different things about the world around us like this. So there's certain aspects of the natural law of dhamma that you need to understand related to speech, actions, and livelihood, your moral conduct. And we're not born with this wisdom internally. We have to actually acquire this wisdom through learning, through reflecting, and through practicing. So when I teach you this moral conduct section, it's important that you understand that it's not rules, it's not commandments. What the Buddha is helping you to be able to see is this natural law. In the way that you interact with people through your speech, actions, and livelihood, if you cause harm, it's going to produce unwholesome results. But if you can understand the natural law, then you can make wise decisions and experience wholesome results. And as you start gradually transforming your mind with more and more wisdom, not believing these teachings, but now when you start practicing this moral conduct, this is where you're going to see real improvements in your life, particularly in your relationships. So as we go today, You're welcome to ask any and all questions. Whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can put that into the comment section and I'll be able to see that and answer your question. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your mic, and ask your questions that way if you like. So we're going to start with right speech because this is the first part of the moral conduct section. And these are the original words of the Buddha. What he's sharing and what he's teaching is part of this core central teaching of the Eightfold Path. He says, "In what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech." Well, during the lifetime of the Buddha, all they had was speech. Nowadays, we might refer to this as right communication because we have text messages, email, social media, voice messages, lots of different ways to actually communicate. And what the Buddha is guiding you here is how to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, and how to make wise decisions so it produces wholesome results in your life based on this natural law. Because if you remember back to the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha said the way to eliminate discontent feelings is to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And it's the Eightfold Path that's going to help you to do that. So not only is each one of these things that he's teaching you is how to get to this point where you're practicing wise decision making that's leading to wholesome results or wholesome dhamma, but he's also teaching you how to eliminate craving, desire, attachment as it's based in your speech. Because when we're lying, there's something that your mind wants. It's craving, it's wanting something. And the mind wants that thing. And if it tells the truth, it knows that it's not going to get that thing. So what we tend to do is we tend to lie in order to get that particular thing that the mind might want. So you're going to need to eliminate lying in order to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And also, by eliminating lying, you'll be able to be considered dependable and reliable and trustworthy in your relationships. As long as we're lying, we're going to experience the difficulties and struggles when people discover those lies. Maybe there's some kind of work project in our professional life that is going to be really helpful for our career. But when people know that we're lying and we're not dependable and reliable or trustworthy, they might not be interested to staff us on that project, which will help us to grow and develop more and more professionally. And our personal relationships are going to discover these lies too. And then we have difficulties there as well. And if you've ever done a lot of lying, maybe when you were a child or maybe teenager, early adulthood, you might have remembered that as you told one person one thing, another person something else, another person something else, your mind had to obsessively figure out when you were talking to any one person, what did you say to one person versus another, so that you don't stumble and trip over your lies. So how could you ever get to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy that is the enlightened mind if the mind's obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person versus another? So eliminating lying, all you need to do is look inward and just speak the truth. And it just makes it so much easier for you in your day-to-day life. Then there's eliminating slander or gossip. This is where an individual might destroy or degrade somebody's reputation, maybe a person or an organization or a company or a group of people or something like this. Well, if you're degrading and disparaging somebody through slander or gossip, this is kind of like going into a dark room and you have a candle and you see other people have a candle too, and you're trying to put out their candle. Because the mind's craving thinks that if I can make this person look bad, then I will look better. And this isn't actually true, because if you put out other people's candle, the room gets darker. It doesn't get brighter. So when you slander or you gossip, you can actually get to a point where potentially you can get injured. You could get beat up. There's been people that have actually been murdered for slander and gossip. If you look at investigative reporters, sometimes they get on the news and they gossip or slander about people and they end up dead. Remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And if you go out into the world and gossip and slander people, you can very easily become injured physically or even murdered. And at the very least, if you're gossiping and slandering with people, when your back's turned, those people are going to gossip and slander about you because you've gotten them used to gossiping and slandering and listening to that and indulging in that. And now when you go away, those people are going to gossip and slander about you. So it's wise to eliminate any of that from your life. Refraining from harsh speech is all about our tone, our tempo, and our word choice, and how we choose to talk with people. And depending on what kind of language that we use, whether it's English or any other languages, we need to pay a lot of attention to our tone, our tempo, and our word choice, because we can be harsh and bitter, and that would cause harm in the world where people are going to be bitter and harsh and hostile with you as well. So you would like to get to the point where you're speaking gently. When you're speaking harsh, there's some craving in there. The mind's wanting something. And the mind thinks if I pressure this person or if I'm aggressive with this person, they'll do things my way. So you would like to learn how to do things in a gentle and warm way. And this is going to take time to train your mind to do that. And that's why the mental discipline section is next week, because you're going to need to train your mind to be able to speak with gentle speech. Because whenever you're harsh and bitter and hostile, this is just going to drive people away from you. They're not going to be interested in associating with you. Then the Buddha teaches to eliminate frivolous speech. What frivolous speech is when somebody's just talking and talking and talking and talking and talking, just yada, 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 yada. They're not really having a conversation. They're really like broadcasting. So if you've ever done this, or if you've ever been around people who have done this, it's kind of like, oh my goodness, like when are they going to stop talking? It's just like a broadcast, right? There's no purpose behind their speech. There's no benefit behind their speech. It's just like a craving to talk. So if you have that where you're speaking frivolously, what you'll notice is you're less and less influential in your relationship, because people get so used to you just rattling off and talking so much, they just tune you out. So if you'd like to be influential in your relationships, you'd like to eliminate any frivolous speech and that underlying craving that's motivating it. So this is the top level of teachings around right speech or right communication, that you eliminate lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. And this will get you to a certain level of purification. But then, as I've always mentioned, the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that other teachings plug into. The Buddha has a teaching on the 5 factors of well-spoken speech that is going to help you more refine the way that you're speaking and choosing to interact in the world through speech. He teaches to speak at the proper time. What you say is true, spoken gently, beneficially, and with a mind of loving kindness. This is called the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Speaking at the proper time, what this involves is ensuring that you're not interrupting people. There's 3 aspects here. The first one is that you're not interrupting others, right? You don't like it when people interrupt you. So if you went around interrupting other people, this is going to hinder you from having wonderful relationships. And what the mind's doing there is it has some craving. It really wants to talk. It just jumps in there. It can't wait for somebody else to stop. The mind just reacts and just jumps in there. So if you can restrain your mind and speak at the proper time, then you're not interrupting people, and you'll notice that your conversations go much better. There's other aspects here to the proper time too. You need to make sure that your mind is prepared to speak. If you think about the times where you've been angry and frustrated and agitated or annoyed and you started speaking, that wasn't the proper time, because you see it resulted in unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. Because of your lack of wisdom of these natural laws, you might have been bitter or harsh and hostile in certain situations, and it damages our relationships because we're not speaking at the proper time, because our mind isn't ready to be speaking. Then the other aspect of proper time is making sure it's the proper time for the other person. If they're angry, if they're frustrated, it's not the right time to talk. If they're tired and agitated or what have you, it's not the proper time to talk. So if you maybe live with somebody, maybe like a life partner or a roommate, and you get a notice in the mail that you guys haven't paid your rent and you're going to be kicked out in 3 days if you don't pay your rent, well, when that person first comes home from work, it would be unwise to jump on that person and start talking to them about this problem right away. That's not the proper time. They just got home, for example. So maybe let them come in, take off their shoes, get some water, get some food, put down their bags. Maybe 30 minutes, an hour after being home, you might say, hey, is this a good time to talk about something important? And they might say, sure, what do you got? And then you share it with them, right? And then you guys figure out how to solve it. Or if they come home and they say, no, I'm not interested in talking. It's been a pretty hectic day. Can we talk about this tomorrow? You need to be comfortable with that, right? Because you're not going to do anything with it right now anyway. Just reserve yourself, restrain the mind. If there's any craving there, don't allow the mind to crave to talk. If they say, no, I'm not really interested in talking, how about tomorrow? Then you should be perfectly comfortable with saying, okay, well, let's talk tomorrow. right? And you just talk tomorrow. So this would be the proper time, making sure that you're not interrupting, making sure that your mind is prepared to talk, and making sure the other person's mind is prepared to talk. Speaking the truth, we've already talked about that in the first one. Speaking gently, we also spoke about that. Instead of harsh speech, you would like to pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. And then you'd like to speak beneficially. What this is all about is having purposeful speech, having clear and concise speech. It's not necessarily about the topic, right? It's about how clear and how purposeful you're speaking. And then the fifth one is speaking with a mind of loving kindness. The opposite of this would be inner hate. What you're interested in speaking with is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This kind of wraps your speech in this warmth and this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, this active goodwill towards all beings. So when you can learn to speak this way, you're going to see that your conversations are going better and better and better. Over a period of 6 months, a year, 2 years, you're going to start cleaning up your relationships. And more, you're going to see people speaking to you in beneficial ways because they're seeing that you're speaking wholesome and they're going to be speaking this way more and more with you. But you shouldn't speak this way in order to get other people to speak with you in a certain way. Because just because you speak like this doesn't mean other people are going to instantly start speaking like this too. You're going to need to get 6 months, a year, 2 years of speaking like this in all your different relationships. And slowly but surely, you'll build up your reputation for speaking very wisely. And people will consider you to be influential in your community. Here in Thailand, we have a word that describes this. It's called barami. This word barami, it means the one who people listen to. And here in Thailand, a lot of villages will have certain village elders who everybody knows they have barami. They are the ones who people listen to. If you have a problem, if you have some difficulties that you're maybe having in your career or your family life or something else, you might go speak with the elders that have barami. They're the ones who people listen to. They're very successful in life. And when I say successful, I don't mean financially successful necessarily. What I mean is that they're successful in their relationships. And now those are the ones who people listen to whenever they're having trouble or difficulties in their life. So you can actually develop this barami by speaking with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, that in your personal and your professional life, you can actually be the one who people listen to. But it's going to take you time to build this up because in the past, maybe with your life partner, your children, your coworkers, your family or friends, maybe your mom or dad, your brothers and sisters, maybe you've been harsh and bitter for a period of time. And you're going to need to make this gradual transition to be able to transform the mind and now be able to speak in ways that are wise. And it's going to take you quite a while to build that up and dial this in closer and closer. But as you do, you're going to see that people will start to notice this improvement and you'll start to see that your relationships will slowly improve. This is the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, and bringing this up into your mind is going to be able to help you build more harmonious relationships. Now remember, as I've taught you guys, there's nothing that you're interested in believing about the teachings of the Buddha, including anything that I'm teaching here. Anything you see me teach or write or anything, you would like to always independently verify it. So let's take these 5 factors of well-spoken speech and let's independently verify it. Take a situation that you know recently or in the recent past that you were in a conversation and it didn't go well at all, that you experienced unwholesome results or unwholesome karma in that conversation and maybe shortly after. Look at that conversation and look at these 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Either you and or the other person wasn't using these 5 factors of well-spoken speech and therefore your conversation didn't go well. Either you weren't speaking at the proper time, you weren't speaking the truth, you weren't gentle, you weren't beneficial, or you weren't speaking with a mind of loving kindness. You might have missed one of these, or you might have missed all of them. You might have missed 3 or 4 of these. But if you just missed one of these, there's the potential for your conversation to go off the rails, so to speak, right? But then once you verify that and you see like, yeah, oh my goodness, that is what happened. I wasn't speaking gentle, or I wasn't speaking with a mind of loving kindness, or I wasn't speaking at the proper time. And that's why the conversation didn't go well. And once you've done that and you verified it that way, look at the other side of this. look at a situation where you've had wholesome conversations and wholesome results, because you've had plenty of those at different times in your life. And in those situations, you didn't know these 5 factors of well-spoken speech, and neither did the other person, but you guys were still practicing them. And this is where you can see that these natural laws are affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. And that conversation went really well because you and the other person were using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. You were speaking at the proper time. What you said is true, gentle, beneficial, and it was with a mind of loving kindness. And that's why your conversations went well in those situations. So even back then, when you weren't aware that you were actually using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, it still produced wholesome results or wholesome dhamma for you. So even though back then you weren't consciously practicing these, it was still helping you to produce this wholesome dhamma. But now you're aware of what these 5 factors are, and you can dial these into your life more and more closely. And as you dial these into your life consciously, practicing them in all situations, this is where you can improve your relationships. And it'll improve your mind too, because you'll know that you spoke in a wise way and you didn't cause any harm to other beings. So you can investigate this further and you can dial this in closer and closer. Always remembering it's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. It's not going to be snap your fingers and instantly do this in all situations. It's not going to happen that way. So you're going to need to dial this in more and more closely. And as you're doing that, you might have trouble in some situations to remember the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Over time, you would like to commit those to memory so that you can practice them more and more. But where you have difficulties, if you can't remember the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, if you can just remember in that business meeting where you have a complete blank on the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, if you can remember to speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, then you're headed in the right direction. This isn't the natural laws, but it's kind of like a way to help you along to practicing something like the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. If you can speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all situations, this will really improve the way that you're interacting in the world. But ultimately, you would like to dial in those 5 factors of well-spoken speech because that's the natural laws. And of course, that top line as well, where the Buddha is talking about eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech, which those are pretty much included in the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. So you could really focus on those and it'll help you to be able to produce more and more wholesome results or wholesome dhamma in your relationships and in your conversations. Let me see if you guys have any questions on right speech before I move on. You guys can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Yusuf has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Hello. So yesterday I was having an exam in the college, and my friend had come out of that exam. So I was like wondering, what is the point of asking him how was his answers? What is the point of asking him how much did he get, or did he read well, or anything? I was just staring at those thoughts, doing nothing, having no motivation to talk. So what is the point of even talking? Actually, I don't sometimes know.
I see. I could hear you a little bit there, Yusuf. I'll try to answer best as I could hear you. And then if there's some follow-up, just let me know. That, you know, if you would like to speak, then you speak. And the point of it is to communicate with other beings. In order to be able to have a successful life, whether it's harmonious relationships or building some wealth or building some professional background and skills where you're able to contribute to the world and help the world, you're going to need to communicate with other people. So this is the purpose of our speech, is to communicate with others and organize our affairs and coordinate activities so that we can contribute things for our life and the life of other people as well.
Okay, so I have another question about something you did mention for me multiple times about people that you won't walk with or be a friend with. My question is about people who like joke or use sarcasm like 90% of their speech. I'm wondering, like being curious, would an enlightened being spend time with those people that don't have like pointful or concise speech, just like joking, and maybe using sarcasm all the time?
An enlightened being can spend time with anybody and everybody, and their mind's perfectly content and peaceful and joyful. They're not going to judge people and shun people and push people away. This isn't what an enlightened being does. On your way to enlightenment, it helps to be among wholesome friends that are practicing the teachings fairly well. And if that means it's only one or two or three friends, then that's fine. It really does help because your mind can be easily influenced by the things that other people are doing. As your practice becomes more and more stable, as your mind becomes more and more stable, it can be fine for you to spend time with anybody and everybody. You'll see that by the time the mind gets to enlightenment, your mind's perfectly peaceful and joyful no matter who you're spending time with. So you're going to need to decide for yourself the types of individuals that you would like to spend time with. And I don't suggest that you spend an enormous amount of time with any one person at all, but instead you kind of like have time that you spend alone, you have time that you spend with a couple of different friends here and there, but you're not just spending an enormous amount of time with any one particular person because your mind and their mind can easily grab on and get attached with each other. So in these situations, Yusuf, you're going to have to look at each situation separately and not judge other people and put expectations on them of how you want them to behave, but instead just train your mind to be content and peaceful. But look at your influence to your mind. If this person's sarcasm and joking, if it's leading you towards having a lot of that and you're seeing unwholesome results, then maybe you spend a little bit less time with that person. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily doing anything harmful or that you need to go away from that person.
Okay, understandable. But sorry, I didn't really understand you on the first question, so I will stay more. You said we need communication to be successful in life or to interact with people because that is something maybe necessary for us. But like chatting with a friend about how did he answer in the exam or how much sleep did he get, that is not necessary for my life. So again, what is the point of asking those questions?
Okay, great. The internet connection is much more clear now, so I could hear you. So if you would like to ask those kinds of questions, you can. I'm not saying that you should ask them. I'm not saying that you shouldn't ask them. But if you asked me those kinds of questions, the way that I would think is, oh, this person cares about me and they're interested in knowing about my life. And that's all that I would think. So why you're asking those questions or what the other person is interpreting that as, that's between you and that person. But that just lets you know the way that I would think about it if somebody was asking me those kinds of questions, is it's to show care and that you're interested in this person's life and you're genuinely curious about what they're doing in their life and how they're conducting their life and how they're experiencing life. Because if you hear things that people are struggling with and having difficulties with, you might be able to offer your assistance and your support in any one given area.
Okay, so part of it is about kindness. I have loving kindness for you. So, sorry. So I will be asking about your life and those things, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So like when I see students at the temple, like I go there usually at 8 a.m. and we start class at 9. But there's students who kind of come in starting around 8:30 sometimes. And as they're coming in, I will say, hi, good morning. How are you? Where are you from? Brand new students, I'm asking them those kinds of questions. Are you traveling in Thailand? What are you doing? If it's students that have been coming for a while, I might be checking up and seeing how they're going in their life. Maybe someone's getting ready to go on a trip or come back from a trip, or maybe they've moved to a new house or something like this. There was some flooding here recently in Thailand. So I checked in on a couple of students that I knew that their house had flooded, and I asked them if they needed any help. I was going to volunteer to go help them and see if there was any students who would like to come along, because once something floods, there's a lot of cleaning that needs to happen. So I might ask them, how are you doing? How's it going with the flood? Have you been able to clean up from the flood? Do you need any help? These kinds of things. Okay, so it looks like Yusuf got the answer to his questions. There's some more here in YouTube. Miles is asking, where can I find part 1? You can find it in YouTube. Since you're in YouTube, you can just look down at our recent live streams and you'll be able to see part 1 that I taught last Sunday. And if you can't find it, all you need to do is put in the search of our channel, part 1 of 3, but you can see it also on the playlist for the group learning program or on the playlist for all of our live streams. You should be able to find it there. Yihung is asking, I feel another point of most of humans' communications is to express their emotions or feelings to others. Would that be enlightened people have this sort of conversation at all? Thank you, teacher. Yeah, an enlightened being isn't going to have conditional feelings. They're not going to be feeling sad and miserable. They're not going to be complaining and talking bad about people. None of that stuff gets discussed because it's really pointless. Because when you tell people that you're sad or angry or frustrated or any of this other stuff, they can't do anything to fix it anyway. So even in the unenlightened state, it's really pointless to talk about your emotions and feelings with others. I know that this is something that's pretty common that people do in the world. They'll complain about all the things that they're experiencing. They'll tell everybody when they're sad, when they're angry, when they're happy, when they're excited, when they're frustrated. But none of that has any bearing on what you're doing in life and what you're able to accomplish. And it just takes a lot of time to do all those kinds of things. If you are learning and practicing these teachings, you already know that it's your own mind that's causing any of those feelings. So if you're having those feelings, the best thing you could do is talk to your teacher. If you're needing to talk to somebody, it's like talking to a life coach or a therapist. You talk to your teacher, and then you make sure that you understand what cravings, desires, attachments are causing those conditioned feelings, so that then you can eliminate those causes, so that then you won't experience those conditioned feelings anymore. That's the best way to approach this, rather than just kind of maybe when we complain to other people about our feelings, or we just feel miserable, we want everybody to know about it. That's not actually solving the problem. To solve the problem, you got to understand what is the craving that's producing these feelings, and the person that can best help you with that is your Buddhist teacher. And then when you talk about that and you figure out what are the cravings, now you work on eliminating them, and then you won't feel those feelings anymore. And that's a really good use of your time. So in some situations, yeah, people do talk about those kinds of things in the unenlightened state, but as an enlightened being, you're very productive in life, not only because your mind's peaceful and calm and serene and content with joy, not only because your mind's focused and concentrated and experiencing clarity, but you're not wasting time feeling miserable and feeling grumpy and complaining, and you're not rattling off at the mouth to people with frivolous speech. When you're interacting in the world, each thing that you're doing is very beneficial and moving your life forward in a very polite and kind and friendly way, that you're interacting with others in a harmonious way. So that should help you, Yihang, to understand the answer to your question there. It looks like Marcy has a question. Go ahead, Marcy.
Thank you, Teacher David. So I'm going to describe a situation and then ask my question. On Facebook, someone had posted that a child endured a fire and was in need of clothing. So I had arranged with my daughter to collect some hand-me-down clothes, and then we went and we purchased a few items. Then I made contact with this person who requested the items, and I went and had a meeting place to drop off the things. I noticed in the mind when I was exchanging the things that I was recognizing that there was a lot of craving in the minds of these others, and it appeared that the initial story that had been given to me was kind of changing. So I was under suspicion or questioning that there may have been some lying. Now, I chose to do this as a practice of generosity. My question is because my intention was a practice of generosity, once I relinquished these items to these people, what they did with it afterwards, whether it was for the truth of the nature of what they had told or if they were running a scam, is on them. Correct, teacher?
Yes, that's right. On your side, your decisions were to practice generosity and practice loving kindness and compassion. And that's what the decisions you were making in your mind. Now, the more that we get to wisdom and we're making those decisions in a way that we know they're going to a place that's actually beneficial, this is going to produce more beneficial results in the world. But regardless, even if you didn't necessarily know what was happening from that point forward and you just didn't have the time to figure it out, or you weren't even capable of figuring it out in that situation, whatever happens with those clothing and those items, it's on those people that your decision was generosity, loving kindness, and compassion, and that's what's going to produce the wholesome results for you. And in situations where you can get to more and more wisdom to know that the things you're donating are going to a wholesome, beneficial place, then that's just going to produce more and more beneficial results in the world. And that's what you would like to get to, but in some cases you're not able to. So that's where you understand that you practice generosity, loving kindness, and compassion, and that's going to produce wholesome results for you.
Teacher, another quick follow-up question. In the moment when, there was a moment in that transaction where I was perceiving, or, maybe my own perception, my own craving or whatever, would a choice of being like, I don't know, this doesn't seem like this is going to be what it's for, and retracting that, would that bring upon unwholesome karma by deciding to say, all right, I'm not gonna give this, would that cause a negative or an unfortunate, I kind of almost like, retracting, and maybe not following through with it, or maybe I should be more diligent in the beginning and find more clarity in what I'm really donating to before I actually make the transaction.
Yeah, if you find yourself in a situation like that, it's possible for you to retract, but you need to do it really skillfully, because if those people have a lot of craving and they're clinging, when you retract, they're going to have anger arising and they're going to attribute that to you. So you would need to do that very skillfully, because in some situations it might be better just to relinquish it and then realize that, okay, in the future, I'm going to need to do some more due diligence before I choose to meet up with people and start offering things for help. So you can retract, and that's just impermanence. If they get angry or frustrated, they're causing that themselves, but you would like to be able to do that skillfully so that it doesn't allow their craving to arise and then they take their anger out on you. In some situations, it might be better just to let it go and then know for the future that if you're in that situation, to do some more due diligence.
All right. Thank you, Teacher David.
Yeah, you're welcome. Looks like Mike has a question. Go ahead, sir.
So for my own practice, it appears that speech is almost an automatic outflow of the thought patterns. And I find that for myself, trying to correct speech begins with trying to watch which thoughts I indulge in and rejecting those that wouldn't match what would be right speech. Would you care to comment on that, whether that would be a correct practice or not?
I'm not hearing you so well, Mike. Your audio is a little bit muffled. Can you say that again?
Okay, I'll move a little closer to the speaker. Hopefully that'll help. From my own practice, what I've noticed is that speech often seems to be an automatic outflow of thought patterns. So I've found that I almost have to continuously monitor what thoughts I indulge in and which ones I don't. So would it be a correct assumption that the beginning place for right speech would begin with watching which thoughts you indulge in and which ones you don't?
Yes, that's where the Buddha is teaching you right intention first. So going back to last week's class where we learned right intention, your speech is emanating from your intentions. So that's why it's important to have the intention of renunciation. This is also referred to as intention or thinking or thought of non-ill will, and the intention of harmlessness. So that's where you would like your speech to emanate from that thinking or those thoughts. Okay, just so you know, Mike, your mic has a lot of feedback there. There's a lot of distortion in your audio. It might be something to look at for future classes. So let me just check one more time, see if we have any questions on YouTube or Facebook. And I don't see any more over there anywhere. So I'm going to move on here to right action. This is the fourth step of the Eightfold Path. This is the words of the Buddha. And what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. This is where the Buddha is helping you to understand that your bodily actions can cause harm, and any harm that you cause, it's going to come back to you. Now, you guys learned in the last class that you can't cause someone discontentedness. You can't cause them to have any certain feelings, but you can cause harm. Causing harm is to cause harm to someone physically, to their material possessions, or to their reputation. This is all can cause harm. And if you cause harm to others, harm is going to come back to you. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you to not take someone's life, to not steal, and to not have sexual misconduct. But he's not giving you an exhaustive list here of every single action that could cause harm. Notice he doesn't say don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face. Well, if you understand right action, you understand that that's unwise, because if you punch someone in the face, they're probably going to punch you back, or they're going to pull out a knife or a gun, or maybe their friends or family are going to attack you. So he's not giving you an exhaustive list here. It would be impossible for him to tell you every single little thing that you could do that would cause harm through your body. But if you understand this step in the core teaching here, he's giving you 3 very impactful ones, then you can apply this to every other aspect of your life that you're not interested in causing harm through your bodily actions. Notice he doesn't say, don't walk down the aisle of an airplane and drag your suitcase and run over people's feet and bump them in their knees. Well, that's because airplanes didn't exist during his lifetime, so he wouldn't have been able to even fathom that kind of thing. But his teachings are timeless, that if you understand what he's teaching about right action of not causing harm through your bodily actions, then you know things like slamming a door in someone's face would be unwise, right? This is going to cause harm. So you're going to need to look at how you interact in the world with your body and make sure that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions. And then take into account these 3 that the Buddha is teaching you and ensuring that you're not doing that. You're going to get more details on these when we study the 5 precepts. In chapter 7, we study the 5 precepts. These are 5 impactful decisions that you could make that are either going to produce wholesome karma or unwholesome karma, depending on whether you make them wisely or unwisely. And he's going to expand upon this for you. Here, he's just summarizing it in a very encapsulated way, and he's essentially pointing to the 5 precepts, because that's where he really expands it and gives you more illuminating language to be able to understand each one of these things. But let me just take one of these, like refraining from sexual misconduct, and kind of hone in on this for a second, because sometimes when people see this, they're a little bit confused or they have a lot of questions because they're asking, like, what does sexual misconduct mean? Well, if you look at the 5 precepts, you'll see that in chapter 7 that the Buddha talks about sex with minors, sex outside of committed relationships, sex with people that you're forcibly having sex with, things like this where you're causing harm. It's important to understand that the Buddha did not talk about same-gender relationships as it relates to sexual misconduct, because 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults that are choosing to have sex with each other, they're not actually causing harm to anyone whatsoever. So if you have a male and a female that's choosing to have sex, they're loyal, loving, consenting adults. They're not harming anyone. The same thing is true about 2 males or 2 females. So if you're someone who prefers same-gender relationships, or you know someone who does, they're not actually causing any harm to anyone whatsoever. Instead, there's people in the world who think that this is harmful in some way, but it's not. You can see the truth for yourself, that there's never been a time in history where all men have had sex with women and all women have had sex with men. It just has never happened. Because of the universal truth of impermanence, some men are going to have sex with women and some men are going to have sex with men. And then some women, they're going to have sex with women, and some of them are going to have sex with men. It's up to the individual. And if they're in a loyal, loving, consenting relationship, choosing to have sex, that's them that's choosing to do that, and they're not harming anyone whatsoever. So the Buddha understood this 2,500 years ago, where today there's people who have craving, desire, they're longing, yearning. They want every man and every woman to have sex with someone of the opposite gender. And because of that, when their craving's not getting fulfilled, their anger is arising. And now they're bitter and harsh and hostile, perhaps. And this is all coming from that ignorance or unknowing of true reality that we talked about 2 classes ago. This misunderstanding and misperception. And because of this, then we see a lot of hatred and anger in the world sometimes around this topic. But you can understand the truth. You can have wisdom, and you can see that 2 people that are choosing to have loyal, loving, consenting relationship who are adults, they're not harming anybody whatsoever. So this is how wise the Buddha was 2,500 years ago, that he understood this. We have people today, quite a few in the world, that don't understand this. More and more people are starting to understand this, but it's coming about now, where 2,500 years ago, the Buddha already understood this. And he was aware of same-gender relationships because he essentially talks about it in his teachings. So this has been happening ever since the beginning of history. There's never been a time where people only had sex with the opposite gender. So we're going to explore this more when we get into the 5 precepts, but that's not going to be probably like another 2 months from now. So that's why I kind of preface it in the way that I'm talking about it now, so that you understand that sexual misconduct involves things that you're causing harm to others through your sexual conduct. And there's other details that we're going to be talking about, but just know that it doesn't include same-gender relationships. There's other things that the Buddha talks about too, like substances that cause heedlessness and gambling. All of these things are based in craving, desire, attachment. Even killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, it's all based in craving and desire, this longing, yearning. And remember, the Eightfold Path is here to help you eliminate your longing, yearning, your craving, because that's what's producing the discontentedness. So let me see if you guys have any questions on right action before we move into the last step that we're going to be discussing today, which is right livelihood. Remember, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, it looks like Yusuf has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Sorry, I wasn't able to continue my questions about right speech. Should I now or wait for you till you finish the class?
Go ahead. If you have questions, you can ask them now.
Okay. So you said to don't spend too much time with one person and try to interact with others. What is the reason behind that?
You must not have heard that. What I shared was that if you spend a lot of time with one particular person, your mind and their mind can easily get attached to each other. And now you're going to have disgruntledness and discontentedness in your relationship because of that. So you would like to be able to spend time alone, spend time with friends and family, but not spending an enormous amount of time with any one particular person, because this is going to promote attachment in both of your minds, and the relationship is going to become sabotaged, where now you guys are both going to be getting discontent with each other, and you're going to fester, and you're going to fight, and you're going to argue, and ultimately the relationship's going to be over. So if you have loving kindness in your relationships, you would like to ensure that your mind's not getting attached, and that you don't allow other people's minds to get attached, even though they sometimes will, that you would like to create the best environment possible so that people don't have an opportunity to get attached to you.
Sorry, were you talking about having attachment when one spends too much time with someone else, or not attachment, but the mind get influenced easily? Did I misunderstand that?
I was talking about attachment. That's why you asked me the question, why do I suggest that you don't spend time with any one person for an enormous amount of time? It's because your minds can get attached to each other, and when that occurs, it sabotages the relationship.
Okay. Another question that I am not sure about the answer of it is, when one spends time with a group of friends, every one of them is going to be jumping over and over, talking not in the proper time, saying unbeneficial things. And when I sit on a chair in the corner, I don't feel that I can talk with them, because it's not going to be in the proper time, or not going to be beneficial or something, because they are jumping. So is it true, or I am just misunderstanding something?
Yeah, the more that you've talked to me about your friend group, Yusuf, and we've had this conversation many times, and I've shared this same advice with you many times, your friends are not practicing these teachings even remotely close. And it sounds like there's a lot of unwholesome things going on, not just what you're telling me now, but lots of other things that you've shared with me privately and publicly as well. And I've suggested to you in the past that it would be wise to find some other friends besides these, because you're going to have lots of difficulties in these relationships. You are having lots of difficulties in these relationships. And as long as you continue to hold on to these relationships, you're going to just keep having problem after problem after problem. There's an enormous amount of craving, desire, attachment, anger, and hatred, and ignorance in your friend group. And when you're in that kind of group, your mind's going to be affected by all of that. It would be wise for you to step away and create more wholesome friends, and learning how to be able to do that. And it's the Eightfold Path that's going to help you to learn how to do that. And it's the 5 precepts as well.
Understandable. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to check one more time to see if we have questions coming in anywhere. All right, I don't see anything anywhere. So let's go on to the last one for today, which is right livelihood. A livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life in the world. And the Buddha is teaching you how to not cause harm through your livelihood. Because if you cause harm in the way that you choose to sustain your life, this harm is going to come back to you. So in the Eightfold Path, he just speaks very generally because his teachings on right livelihood are in other places. So he's just pointing to those other places. So he says, in what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood. So this is just a basic teaching where he's pointing to another part of his teachings. And then if you go to other parts of his teachings, you can see what he teaches about right livelihood. He has two levels of purification, or two folds of purification. And I'm going to teach you the first fold of purification here today, because that's what you need to start working on if you're just getting onto the path to enlightenment. This first one, he talks about eliminating business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. These are all going to cause harm in the world if you sustain your life off of these things, and now that harm is going to come back to you. So you can independently verify these. Just like all the other teachings of the Buddha, you can learn them, you can reflect on them to independently verify, and then you can practice to see the real results in your life, because that's where the real results start shining through when you're actually practicing the teachings. So let's just reflect on one of these so you can see how to do this, and then you can do the rest if you like. If you take one like substances that cause heedlessness, if I stood on the street corner and I sold crystal methamphetamine or heroin into the community, I'm causing harm because these people are getting addicted to this substance. It's causing them heedlessness. They're going out and robbing and stealing from people in order to bring me money. And now, because of that harm that I'm causing, I'm very likely to get beat up. I could get robbed. I could get murdered. I could get arrested. These are all things that could occur. I could even get addicted to that substance myself. This is the unwholesome karma, or the unwholesome results that is happening based on my unwise choice of choosing to sell substances into the community. But this natural law of karma, it's a law that's functioning at a much higher level. So most governments, it is illegal for me to stand on the corner and sell heroin and crystal methamphetamine into the community. But there's governments that they say, hey, if you would like to be a cashier at that liquor store, no problem. We're not going to arrest you. Go ahead. We'll let you do that, right? The governmental laws, the human laws, they are imperfect because they're created and administered by human beings, and human beings are prone to error. So if you just follow the human laws, you're not going to get to enlightenment, and you're still going to have unwholesome results happening in your day-to-day life because these human laws are imperfect. But if you're practicing the natural law of karma, which is a much higher law, you won't have any issues in the world because you're practicing the natural laws. So even though a government might say that, yeah, you can go work as a cashier in that liquor store, you might decide based on the natural law of karma and everything that you know about it, that it would be unwise for you to do that. Because working in a liquor store, you're very likely to get robbed. Someone might come in and actually steal money. And in the process, you could easily get beat up or murdered in that situation. And at the very least, you're going to be dealing with intoxicated clientele from time to time coming in at that liquor store or at the bar or wherever it is that you're working. So one of the things that the Buddha is guiding you to do, in addition to everything else and training your mind, is to create the ideal life for yourself, where you're living the ideal life, that you've chosen a livelihood where you feel at peace, that you feel joy, that you notice that you have ambition and motivation and enthusiasm to do this work. And it doesn't even feel like work anymore. So if you go to work each day to a place where you're dealing with intoxicated people, it's not going to be very peaceful for you there, and you're not going to really enjoy that. So that's what the Buddha is guiding you to do here with your livelihood, is get to this ideal life where you're sustaining your life in a way that you have ambition, enthusiasm, and motivation. And you can see that further in the next part. This part here, the 5 livelihoods that would cause harm, you would like to choose a livelihood that isn't one of those. But then the Buddha gives guidance on how you conduct your livelihood in the way that you actually function within your livelihood. He suggests to you that you eliminate scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. What scheming is when you're corrupt in the work that you're doing. So if I was a politician, for example, it's not one of those 5 livelihoods that we just talked about. But if I was corrupt and I was scheming and I was maybe 10 or 15 years into my career and people found out about that, I'm most likely not going to get reelected. So if I do any kind of scheming, whether I'm a police officer, a politician, or anything like this, it's going to produce difficulties in my livelihood. I'm not going to be able to sustain my life here. So the Buddha is guiding you in how to create this wholesome livelihood where you have nothing but success. And then he talks about flattery. What flattery is where you're maybe giving insincere comments to your business partners, to your customers, to your coworkers, just to get people to kind of do things that you want them to do. Like maybe like a customer, you just want them to buy something from you. So you're kind of flattering them with comments in order to get them to buy something. If you've ever been into a store like that, where as soon as you walk in, they're like, oh, you look so handsome. You're so beautiful. Oh, you've got the most beautiful shirt on. That color of shirt really brings out the color of your eyes. You know what you really need now? You need some earrings. I have these perfect earrings that are going to help you to look so much more beautiful than you already look. Let me show you these earrings, right? This is like maybe insincere comments just to try to get somebody to purchase something. And if you do this, people are going to be able to see through that and they're not going to be interested to purchase from you. And if you've ever been in a store like that, then you know how you felt, that you didn't really particularly care for purchasing from this store. What hinting is where you're not being clear or concise about what it is that you're doing. So let's just say that we were all kind of like on a project team and we needed to go brief our boss on this particular project. If we were hinting and, we were kind of like beating around the bush, so to speak, we weren't quite clear and concise, this isn't going to go very well for our professional career. But if we're clear and we're concise about our project and how we're communicating to the boss, this is going to go really well for us. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you not to do this hinting in your livelihood. What belittling is where you're talking in degrading and disparaging ways about your coworkers, your customers, your business partners, or even your competition. If you're belittling your competition to your current customers, they're not going to like that and it's going to turn people away from you. So there's no need to belittle and degrade and disparage other people. You don't need to do that. You can just talk about what you choose to do. If someone asks you a question about another business or what somebody else does, you can just say, I'm not sure what they do. What I do is I can do this for you, right? This is what I'm capable of providing for you. And if they say, well, what about your competition? I'm not sure. You can go talk to them if you like, but this is what I'm able to do for you, right? So you're not interested in belittling others because this is not going to help you to develop a healthy and wholesome livelihood where people are coming to you and your business is really thriving and your professional career is thriving. And then this last one, the Buddha talks about pursuing gain with gain. What this is where you're just going out into the world in order to have a job to just make money. And that's all you care about is the money itself. That you don't really care about the product or the service, that you're just going there to collect a paycheck. And if you've ever done that before, you've ever had that kind of job, you probably felt quite miserable going to that job every day. You probably dragged yourself to work. When your alarm went off, oh man, you just really hated the idea of getting up out of bed to go do this work, right? So your life doesn't have to be that way. You can actually get to a point where you thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing, that you have ambition and motivation, you have a willingness to do something, that you have enthusiasm about your work. Here in Thailand, there's people who sell all kinds of different things. You can go to the street and get street food, and you can see there's someone standing on the street corner just selling mango and sticky rice. They just feel so wonderful to pick their mangoes out of their trees each day, bring them in and sell them, cut them up and slice them and serve them with some mango and sticky rice and a little bit of coconut on there. And they just thoroughly enjoy providing mango and sticky rice to the community. They have much enthusiasm around this. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to find your mango and sticky rice. What is your mango and sticky rice? What is it about this world that you would like to contribute to this world in a positive way? And then find a way to make money out of that, where the money isn't the focus, but instead you just really enjoy serving your mango and sticky rice. So whatever that is, whether it's nursing, whether it's construction work, whether it's driving a taxi, no matter what it is, find your mango and sticky rice and then thoroughly enjoy it and get really good at it. And then you'll just be enjoying every single aspect of your life. If you have this place you go 6, 8, 12 hours a day that you despise and it feels miserable for you, you're never going to get to a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life. So you're going to need to find your mango and sticky rice and thoroughly enjoy it. And then as you're enjoying the work that you do, the people around you are going to enjoy it as well. That you're going to see more and more people are interested in coming and partaking in whatever it is that you're providing to the world, whether it's a service or it's a product. So this is Right Livelihood. And now just to summarize what we've been talking about, and I'll open up to any final questions you guys have, is we've been talking about right speech. And this is ensuring that all your verbal communication isn't harmful. But remember, we also talked about this in terms of right communication, because during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was only speech that they had. They didn't have things like text messages, chat, social media posts, emails, things like this. You would like all that to be harmless. So for example, like the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, speaking at the proper time. If you're angry, that's the wrong time to go over to your keyboard and pound out an email and press send, right? So if you're sitting there pounding on your email with a bunch of anger, instead of pressing send, press save. Right? Save yourself the trouble, because if you put that unwholesomeness, those unwise decisions out into the world, you're going to have to deal with that coming back to you. So hit save and then come back 2 or 3 days later or 2 or 3 hours later and look and see, is it really wise for you to be sending what it is that you sent? More likely than not, you're going to see nothing but anger and hostility in that email, and it's unwise for you to send it. Right action is all about ensuring you're not causing harm through your bodily actions, that all your bodily actions should be harmless. And then right livelihood is all about ensuring that the decisions that you make in order to sustain your life, that it doesn't cause harm to others. And what I taught you here is the first fold of purification. There's a second stage or a second fold of purification, a second level of purification that you'd ultimately like to get to in order to practice right livelihood. If you're either in between jobs, or you're looking to change jobs, or you're in a job that you just don't have the enthusiasm about and you're looking for something else, I suggest you go to volume 12, chapter 14 of our book series. That's where you're going to see the 2 levels of purification that the Buddha teaches. There's 2 folds of purification that you would like to be able to get to. And that's in volume 12, chapter 14 is where you'll find that. Essentially, what you would like to do with your moral conduct is something that the Buddha taught. Is, of course, he taught to not cause any harm through any of your moral conduct whatsoever. But one of his teachings that he describes in another part, he says that before you do something, whether it's a bodily action, a verbal action, or a mental action, this is getting to what you were saying, Mike, is that before you do these things, you should reflect. Is it going to cause harm to others? Is it going to cause harm to me? Or is it going to cause harm to both? And if before you do something, if you reflect and it's going to cause harm to others, to you, or both, he says you should refrain from doing that thing. Don't do it. And then while you're doing something, he says you should reflect, whether it's bodily, verbal, or mental, that you should reflect. Is it causing harm to others? Is it causing harm to me? Or is it causing harm to both? And if so, you should refrain from doing that particular action. And then after you've done something, it would be wise to reflect. Has it caused harm to others? Has it caused harm to me? Or has it caused harm to both? And if it has, then you can tell yourself, don't ever do that thing again, because anytime you cause harm to others, then it's going to come back to you. So that's the real key around your moral conduct. And the Buddha is giving you the guidance and almost like the cheat codes of how to actually practice in such a way that you're not causing any harm to others. And now as you do that and you implement that into your life, more and more, you're going to see more and more improved results. But in order to get to this, you're going to need to understand the mental discipline. And that's what we're going to be talking about next week. I'm going to help you to understand the mental discipline of right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, because you wouldn't be able to practice the moral conduct without the mental discipline. And you also wouldn't be able to practice that without the wisdom. So it's all 3 of these sections, all 8 factors coming together that you dial in closer and closer into your life. If you had a speaker system and you were trying to get a really good quality sound out of these speakers and you had 8 dials, you would tweak these dials to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. And your mind functions the same way. When you dial these 8 factors of the Eightfold Path into your life and you tweak it more and more and more, you're going to get a better quality performing mind more and more and more. So that's why I'm spending the time at the beginning of the group learning program like this to really walk you through and make sure you understand it. And then we're going to revisit it later in the program. But here at the beginning, I'd like to be sure you really understand it and you can start getting introduced to it, and you can be learning it in classes. You can be learning it in the books. And then, of course, we have the videos and the podcast, the audiobooks. You can be refreshing your memory on this throughout your journey to enlightenment. You're going to need to learn this more than one time. It's not going to be just once that you learn it and it sticks with you. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that's going to lead to the improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. So let me see what other questions you guys might have about anything that we've been talking about here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. So it looks like Marcy has a question. Go ahead, Marcy.
Thank you, Teacher David. So I find it's easier for me to give you a scenario and then ask my question. I take both of my dogs down to the beach to walk them. And the one dog that I have is just over a year, and I am training him. They're both on leashes. I have 30-foot leashes so that when we're at the beach by myself and no one's around, I kind of give them some free rein. But, I for the most part, I'm in total control of my dogs at all times. My older dog, who's 16, he is a little old and blind, and once the puppy starts barking, he starts barking, and it's sometimes a little bit more difficult to get him under control. One day while we're down there, we're walking the beach, I have the puppy in a sit-stay. He's on leash, I'm holding the leash, and I am, trying to corral him to stop barking so that I can put my attention to the older dog to get him to stop barking. And in the meantime, this woman yells from, a distance away, and she says, your dogs make it extremely difficult for me to walk this beach. And I did not reply because I was kind of like, I'm not causing your discontentedness. If you're discontentedness because of my dog's barking, that's your mind. But my question is teacher, in a situation like that, how does one respond? Or was I taking the right speech by not responding at all?
Yes, sometimes the right response is to say nothing at all and just walk away, or just continue to do whatever it is that you're doing, that you don't have to respond to every time somebody says something to you. So if somebody says something negative and hostile or bitter or things like this, and you do speak to them, you're just encouraging the continued hostility and bitterness and harshness. And more, you would like to extinguish all of that out of your life. So I'll give you an example that is similar to this, but you guys can all relate to it. That if you have Facebook people that are showing up on your Facebook profile or any groups that you're in, that you're communicating in, and people start being bitter and harsh and hostile and replying to you and being argumentative, and they're trying to entice you into something, this is like them picking up the rubber ball of anger and argumentative speech and throwing it around the room. Well, if you pick it up and you reply back to them and you start being bitter and harsh and hostile, you got a one big argument and big conflict going on here. But the way that you clean this all up is you choose not to reply to those people. If you look at the Facebook profile that I have, and if you look at the Facebook group that I'm in and that I administer, there's no hostility, there's no bitterness or anything like that. It wasn't always like that. There used to be people that would comment something aggressive and hostile and bitter, and I would just delete it. And then they would get angry and they would yell and holler and they would cuss at me in personal messages. And then I would just say nothing at all and they would end up blocking me, right? So if they would like to go away because I deleted their message, then so be it. It's better for them to go away because we're creating a community of people who are into wholesome things. So that's why our Facebook group and my Facebook profile has nothing but wholesomeness on there. And there's not people commenting in negative ways, because if somebody does, I just delete the message, right? So it's the same kind of thing in your day-to-day life, that not only in social media would you like to function that way, that you just don't respond to negativity and degrading and diminishing things, but you do this in day-to-day life too. And then if that lady sees you again, she knows that no matter what she says, Marcy's not going to reply to me. She's not going to get any response from you. So more and more, she's just going to choose on her own to not say anything to you. Whereas if you engage with her and you give her that argumentative back, or even just a, hey, I'm a sorry or whatever, then she's just going to continue to do what she's doing. So when people are interacting with you in unwise ways, you can just choose to go away from that. And that can be your response, is to ignore it, continue to do what you're doing, or walk away. And that's the best way to extinguish that. And where this is coming from is your choice to live in a place where there's lots of craving, there's lots of anger, and there's lots of that ignorance or unknowing of true reality. So you're going to come in contact with these kinds of things from time to time, that people are going to be doing these kinds of things. But if you don't have a craving, if you don't have an expectation or a desire for other people to function in a certain way, when those kinds of things happen, you can just remain completely peaceful and joyful and just kind of smile on the inside and just have compassion for this person, that it's concern for their misfortune, that it's so unfortunate that they don't even realize they're causing their own difficulties and their own struggles, and there's an escape for them. So you just maintain your loving kindness and compassion for them, and then just continue to go about what you're doing. And that's the best way to respond in that situation.
Thank you, Teacher David. It does appear that I would probably have to work on the latter part of what you said, is generating love and kindness and compassion for them, because the mind was stuck in the sense of like, if you're having discontentedness, it's on you, not me. And that's kind of where my mind had stopped at that point. I didn't get to the point of trying to develop any compassion. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's the best thing to do, because that's going to protect your mind. Because remember, in your situation, if you're not getting what you want, which is people to not be hostile with you, if you have an expectation in there, then your anger might arise. So just to be sure, when anger's coming at you, you would like to generate loving kindness and compassion to make sure there's no anger that comes into your mind, and that's going to protect your mind. Okay, looks like Yusuf has a question. Go ahead, sir.
To follow up on Marcy's questions, should I not feed their expectations, our cravings, even if they were the slightest? Like if you were wearing sunglasses and I told you, David, it is not correct to wear it like this, but you need to change it a little bit. It is so slight that you might say, oh, okay, I will do it the way you say. If you did it the way I say, you maybe are feeding my expectation, our cravings, to keep telling you about more and more and more things. Would that be right? Like even the slightest things, I shouldn't feed people to keep saying or doing?
In most cases, it's unwise to feed someone's craving, and it would be unwise to do that. But there's some situations where it might be wise to do it. I gave a student an example of this recently, where like say that you're going to your parents' house and you just arrived to your parents' house, and you usually don't stay there. Maybe you stay at your own house for like the last year or 2 or 3, and now you show up and you're a guest in someone's house. And now maybe you go into your room and you've got your suitcase on your bed, and maybe you've got your door wide open in your room, and maybe your mom walks by and says, hey, close your door. And they kind of like bark at you a little bit to close your door. Well, you just showed up. It's like, that they're causing their own discontentedness. They're attached to this. It doesn't make sense in some situations to be like, Mom, you're really attached here. You're having craving. You should be happy if I have my door open or if I have it closed. It should be no big deal. So it's kind of unwise for you in some situations to not feed their craving. In this situation, if mom has a craving, you know what? Just shut the door. And then maybe like 2 or 3 days later, when things are a bit more stable and you've been there for a little while and you've kind of been having some conversations, then maybe you can help mom. Maybe you come out of your room and you leave your door open on the way to take a shower, and your mom's like, hey, close your door. And now maybe is a time to say, Mom, would it be okay with you if I kept my door open? I'd really like to get a breeze going in the room, and kind of like I sprayed some stuff in there and I'd like to kind of get the breeze to come. I'm wondering, would you be willing to let this go and allow me to just leave the door open? Right? But doing that at the very first time might not be wise. So I can't give you a decision tree that is going to give you a permanent answer in every situation. I know, Yusuf, you tend to ask these kinds of questions where you're looking for a decision to make and then just do it that way all the time. If that was the case, then it would be permanence. The only thing that I can teach you that's like that is related to the natural laws of existence. I can tell you that whenever discontentedness arises, always cut it off and cut it off and cut it off and cut it off. That's a decision that I can tell you, right? But when it comes to interacting with other beings and all the variables that you're going to experience, I can't give you a decision that says never, ever, ever, ever feed someone's craving. This can be unwise, right? There's some situations where it's actually helpful. And I can give you examples of that where I've fed people's craving and it actually helped them to extinguish it. But that's where you need to have wisdom in that situation. In the example you gave, where a friend is telling me about sunglasses and what I should and shouldn't do, I wouldn't feed that craving. I would do exactly the opposite. Even if I was planning to take my sunglasses off and they said, hey, you should really take your sunglasses off, I would leave them on just so that they wouldn't keep putting their expectations on me. Not out of spite, not because I'm trying to make them angry, because they're the ones who are making themselves angry. But if I feed their craving and their expectation in this situation, it's not going to be just the sunglasses. It's going to be something else and something else and something else and something else. So in those kinds of situations, one of the most loving and kind and compassionate things you can do is help someone extinguish a craving. But each situation is going to be a little bit different. So you shouldn't ever walk away from a conversation like this thinking that there's one permanent fixed answer, other than when it comes to things like the natural laws of existence.
I wasn't trying to ask you to tell me what to do, but instead I was curious or looking for wisdom because I thought it was like very unwise, like in all situations, to feed someone else's cravings or expectations. But here you said it is wise sometimes. So I was like, what? Why is it wise sometimes? Like if you didn't do the thing your mom said about the door, why would that be unwise?
Because as soon as you show up, if mom's got a craving for you to close your door and you don't close it, mom's going to get angry. Right? And she's not going to know that she's causing her own anger. She's going to attribute it to you. And you just showed up. And the last thing you're interested in doing is being around a bunch of people with anger. Ultimately, it doesn't matter whether people are angry or not. You can maintain your contentedness. But if you're not enlightened yet, the last thing you're interested in doing is being around a bunch of people with anger. Even an enlightened being, they're not interested in being around a bunch of people with anger, right? But they can maintain their contentedness in that situation. So no need to trigger one of mom's cravings in this situation and allow her mind to get angry, because that's what she's going to do. That's going to happen if you're wise about craving, desire, attachment. Just close the door, let mom be peaceful, let her get her pleasant feelings, and then just help mom later on in another situation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. I see your question there, Marcy. All right, or your comment. You're welcome. Pleased to help you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. I'm not seeing anything that anybody's asking. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to end by saying thank you to all of you guys. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest in learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. As you guys would like to learn more, there's more classes for you. I'm going to be teaching next Sunday that next section of the Eightfold Path, which is the mental discipline section. We're going to be exploring right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And if you can attend the classes either 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. Thai time, that's the time that you can attend. And if for some reason you can't attend, you'll find it on YouTube, you'll find it on Facebook, and you'll find it on our podcast. It's all been recorded so that you guys can digest it at some point in the future. And then on Wednesdays, I do meditation with students, and then I open up to whatever questions you guys have. This Wednesday, we're going to be in part 3 of our 4-part series on breathing mindfulness meditation. So if you'd like to join for that, you're more than welcome. So perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.